As the 2024 president of the EDC, I'm going to take the liberty of calling this January 21st, 2025 meeting of the Economic Development Commission to order. It's about 4:07 p.m. We're in the McCloskey Conference Room in the Bloomington City Hall. And I believe we're on Zoom also, correct?
Indeed.
And we've posted and adhered to all the open door requirements. So I'll do a roll call, and I'll call myself first. I'm Kurt Zorn.
I'm Tim Hankey.
I'm Isak. Yes, Isak Asari.
Okay. And, I'm sorry, and staff, please?
On the staff side,
Dee Dolorosa, ESD.
Jane Cooper-Smith, ESD, and we have a new cast of characters
Yes?
from the legal department.
I'm Margie Rice, I'm the Corporation Counsel.
I'm Anna Lamberti Holmes, and I'm Assistant City Attorney.
Jessica McClellan, City Controller.
And guests?
Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm a grad student in the media school.
Great.
Looking to be
Welcome.
appointed to a commission. Oh, sorry. We have spots. So.
Don't tell me, I might get sucked in.
So our agenda had new business as the next item, but I'm going to take the prerogative of moving just some old business, or I guess it is new business, but organizational
Yeah.
business. So I'm going to turn that over to Jane.
Yeah.
And then Jane can turn it over to whomever she wants.
Yeah, so we, I think since we are missing 2 members, it would be great to have the organizing meeting during our February meeting.
Okay.
I do anticipate that we should have some business in February in addition to the organizing duties. I wanted to say Liz Feidel was, well, yeah, I mean, first of all, just an acknowledgement that we were so lucky to have Cheryl Munson on this commission last year, and unfortunately, our community lost a shining star when she passed. During the caucus for the Dems this weekend, she was replaced by Liz Feidel, who I think will be a great addition to the Monroe County Council. But they have not met to assign commission appointments for 2025 yet. So that caucusing just happened Sunday. So the county appointments are 1 year. So it could be that it's Liz, or it could be that it's assigned to someone else. That rotates. I think that was all. We did have one task related. We have conflict of interest forms, so I'll circulate those at the end of the meeting, and we'll bring those back to the next meeting as well.
So,
Is that it on organizing? And then election of officers we can do at the next meeting.
Yeah, well, that actually answered my question, because I had a meeting with Jennifer Crossley, who's heading up boards and commissions, and there wasn't anything specific that said that we have to do elections annually. But since the county commissioner position changes annually, because if it's only a 1-year appointment, then yeah, then I would assume that we'd have to do elections every year.
and we've always
Yeah.
done
Okay.
it every year.
I think it's nice.
The way
Yeah.
Share the
I like the
responsibility.
idea of doing it when the other 2 people aren't here, because then it makes it very clear who we want to elect. The other 2 people.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys have
I think that's fair.
So, Jane, the recommendation is to wait until February.
I think that would
So,
be nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's wait until February when Vanessa is here and
Yeah.
and the new members
And
here.
the name of the new county council?
Liz Feidel.
Yeah.
Liz Feidel, thank you.
Not sure.
And I've encountered her through arts locally, but I know she has done a lot of other things as well.
President of AFL-CIO
Okay.
for 20 years.
So the other new business is a 2025 project overview.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of acknowledge backing the frame way up, acknowledge that the purpose of the EDC is really to implement the tools that we have access to drive development in our community. In the past, those have been, tax abatements, different types of bond financing programs, bonds that are backed by whoever the borrower is, bonds that are backed by the city when it's a project that really benefits us. And these programs can change as they come down from the state. So we had a quiet year in terms of meetings last year, but we've actually been really busy behind the scenes. And I don't know that I can talk about everything in great detail, but things that I anticipate us seeing this year, the Summit District PUD was approved last year, which will add 4,250 housing units to Bloomington. There'll be a range of housing types, and this will be an awesome opportunity for Bloomington to grow when we know, based on data that we have access to, we're not in a growth cycle right now. So this will be a really great opportunity. We just learned last week that we received $4 million in READY funding through the Indiana Economic Development Corp for infrastructure related to this project. So that's a huge win. And then the developers.
Jenny, excuse me.
Yeah.
The READY is related to what? The summit?
The summit.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Excellent.
So that's really significant. I think the award sizes range widely, but they're not issuing a lot of $4 million awards for our region. So it's big.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's because that neighborhood will serve our whole region with its location next to I-69. It's really easy for workers to get to employment zones in Spencer, down to Crane, up to Indianapolis. It's really huge. So we know that the developers have a gap for infrastructure on that project, and we've been meeting with them over the past year to work on a potential way to address that. And I think Jessica maybe will be coming back to the EDC in the first quarter, potentially for
For Summit,
Mhm.
we get movement if we get a good deal for the city with the developer, we will be coming back, yes. If the developer
Right.
likes our offer.
So it's not cooked yet. We're not there yet. All right, so that's one project. Another tool I wanted to point out is the bond financing program through IFA, the Indiana Financing Authority, for which Kurt sits on the board. This is the Residential Infrastructure Fund. It's a newer program, and we just received a $2 million award that will contribute to Retreat at Switchyard, which is an affordable housing development adjacent to Switchyard Park. Like everyone else, Retreat, or Real America, the developer, has had some significant challenges with costs escalating. There were, mainly like Surprise Limestone was one driver of cost, and then a second driver is just that the project financing, including their abatement, was secured in 2021, and then we all know that construction costs went up exponentially in 2022.
Right.
So they just have a major gap that they're trying to work with.
Right.
So the Residential Infrastructure Fund will really help with that, and that will be a developer-backed bond that will come before the EDC for approval. That probably will be the first thing that is seen. And then we have some proposals that would support renovation of affordable housing developments in the community. So that those would be for Cambridge Square and Henderson Court apartments. We're working, I haven't brought those to legal yet, but they're really ready. So I'm hopeful that those can come before the board relatively soon as well. And that those would be pilots, payments in lieu of taxes. And we've done these types of projects or pilots for affordable housing developments in the past, and it's really great because it secures that affordability during the duration of their financing. So we get 17 years of affordability out of it. But because these projects receive federal incentives, they're really committed to a 30-year term of affordability. So it's just kind of a win-win story. It's a good company. These are affordable developments that have been in Bloomington for a long time, and then this just renews the cycle and means that we'll have access to them for a longer period. So I think those are the main things that I expect us to look at together. And then, of course, we'll have our abatement cycle that will kick off in late spring, where we have compliance reporting for all of our active abatements. I do anticipate doing a deep dive on the Catalent abatement. As you all are aware, Novo Nordisk did an asset, I think it's called an asset purchase of Catalent, and so they own all of the whatever assets that belong to the former company. They're completely transferred. So that includes the abatements and everything that went along with them. So technically it should be a 1-for-1. But I just think there's a real, I don't know, there's an opportunity for our community in there, and I think we'll probably be looking holistically at what's happening. So that was sort of a nonsense sentence.
To that point as well, I do think we should make sure that we're coordinating with the county EDC as well, because they also have I seem to recall also hearing when they were doing the purchase some conversation around that for the county EDC. So I think we can sort of collaborate to make sure that or coordinate at least to make sure that we, you know, whatever best outcome we can achieve.
Yeah, I mean, typically we work really closely with the county assessor's office, especially with anything relating to the abatements, but typically, and the compliance related to them. But typically, it's the Bloomington Economic Development Commission that's engaging on a project inside city limits, and then the Monroe County Economic Development Commission that's engaging outside city limits.
Don't they have one with the county as well? I thought they also had some type of an abatement with...
No, you might be thinking of Simtra, which is another biopharmaceutical manufacturer,
That's why. Thank you.
Yeah. So compliance season will be really April through June, and then we'll see what the future holds after that. Any questions? I mean, this is a little bit of a different approach. In the past, I think with the EDC, we didn't talk about anything until it was live and ready to go, but these projects have been in the hopper, so I feel pretty confident about them.
That's great.
Yeah, I appreciate the update, so we know what's coming
Yeah.
in the near future.
How do you promote the tools that we have?
That's a great question. I don't think we are promoting them. I think we've really shied away from promoting them, and I understand why. We don't promote tax abatements because we want to drive revenue and we want to capture it. But I think tools like this residential infrastructure bond, I think these are going to become increasingly important to close the gap for developers as we invite them into our community, specifically thinking about Hopewell and all the activity that's getting ready to happen there. So I think it'll be really important to be able to talk about these. Your question, though, is about how we promote them. We list them on our website, but we don't advertise them or pre-commit to a certain amount of incentives for new projects. This has been a strategy in the past as a way to ensure that the city isn't putting more on the table than what it has to. I'm afraid that given the construction environment currently, just construction costs and the development environment currently, I'm afraid that we might be hindering ourselves a little bit by not being able to communicate in advance what's available. So I think there are incremental ways to do that in presenting about projects in this meeting and educating more broadly about the tools to our electeds is one way to start, and then just making sure our website is a usable tool for us. We share right now; it's just a collection of links, but if we can share it and it's dynamic and I don't know, it could be more informative.
You said at the beginning of the meeting that we're not in a growth cycle, and my feeling in the community is that's the case. And I know the school system hired a consultant, and their report was pretty significantly negative. What information do you have, or what information do we use to indicate the economic health
Of Bloomington?
Yeah.
Well, let's see, I'm trying to think about the right way to tackle this question. I mean, we do look at population as a way to think about what's happening broadly in our community. We know that we're losing population age 25 to 44, and we know that Bloomington is, generally speaking, we're graying, which means we have people leaving the workforce. We're supporting more people who are exiting the workforce, and that's fine. It is a great place to retire to, and we want a really dynamic community, but we are concerned about this age 25 to 44 group because they're the folks that are, you know, paying income tax. They should be growing here. Their kids are populating our school districts. So
They're volunteers.
They're volunteers. Well, actually, I hear volunteers are younger and older, and that child-rearing age people tend to be less likely. So thanks, Isak. You're getting it all done.
Yeah.
And then I think we can look at changes in assessed value as another way to track what's happening, especially for this commission. And we started working on a tool last year, and I don't know where we set it down, but we wanted to have a map that would show changes in AV over time. And we have a really great GIS department that did.
We're working on it
They did round
for this
one
year.
of that. You're still.
We're
active
working on it for this year.
Yeah, great. So the idea is that if we have a map that shows us what's happening with AV, we can see where dead spots are in Bloomington. We can see if we're over-investing in certain areas or under-investing in others. This kind of ties into a different way of thinking about the TIF as a tool. The TIF is the Redevelopment Commission's tool. It's not ours, but we can support it in different ways. So in Bloomington, we have a consolidated TIF, which was done really intentionally at the end of the Cruzan administration as a way to consolidate resources to support strategic investments like Hopewell. So when the TIF is consolidated, the proceeds from the TIF can be reinvested across the whole consolidated area. Whereas the tool, I mean, Kurt, this is ridiculous. You should be describing all of this. Tell me what my grade is, please. Whereas, you know, in other communities, the tool, and maybe previously in Bloomington, the tool was used in more of a targeted way where you're tipping specific parcels and then supporting that specific development with proceeds from the TIF. And I think there's a case to use both of those tools, but I think maybe kind of like that residential infrastructure fund, Bloomington hasn't really used the scalpel. We've been using, I don't know, what's the other? We've been using a hacksaw. We've been using an axe. None of these are good metaphors because we're.
I'll ask my daughter. She's a surgeon. She amputates and also.
Well,
uses a
hopefully
scalpel.
she's not using a
Ask her what she
hacksaw.
uses for the amputations.
Is the Hopewell development entirely in a TIF?
It is. Jessica, do you want to speak to that at all? That Hopewell's in the TIF or?
Hopewell's, yeah.
It was
Hopewell's in the-
intentionally, the Cruzan administration knew that the hospital was going to be redeveloped, and so when they did the consolidated TIF, intentionally captured that area.
Okay.
So that funds could be used for that project.
But I think in Bloomington I don't know what the sites are offhand, but I think that we should consider entertaining project-based TIFs. And there's no reason not to. Again, getting back to
And
that.
if you did that, it would have to be outside of the consolidated TIF, right?
Yes, or you can do carve-outs that reset the clock. Is that right, Jessica?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I had a couple of questions. The first one, just a very maybe pedestrian question, but you said in terms of the website and presenting and promoting the different tools that are available, that we're not able to present them sort of forward facing the way that maybe you'd like to. What is
maybe
what
not
keeps us
even
from doing that?
the way I would like to. I will just say the way other communities do it. In other communities, there's just there can be, and I don't want to say there is universally, but there's often more consensus about how they're going to approach their growth as a community and what that means and what they're willing to put on the table for it. So in other communities, employers might be able to, for example, know out of the gate that if I come to this community, I can get a pretty standard tax abatement. And
Right.
we just don't do that.
Right.
And so we've really shied away because we can't guarantee the way
Yeah.
an agreement might shake out. We've really shied away from
But-
talking
but
about
what-
it.
What keeps that from happening here? Is it, what's the pain point to, so if we wanted to change it so that we could do that and give more consistency, what would have to change?
Well, it is complicated. So we have a lot to offer as a community, and so I do think it would be wrongheaded of us to give everything away
Sure.
by right.
Sure.
And so that's one factor. Like, there's a movement, and Kurt, again, you could talk about this, but there's a movement in economic development that would say don't ever issue tax abatements. We met a few years ago with the city of Arlington when we were looking into creating the transportation demand management rule,
Yeah.
and kind of got off topic with them to talking about economic development incentives, and they were like, no, categorically, we haven't offered abatements in years. We don't have to.
Right.
It's competitive,
Yeah.
whatever. And so there are sometimes cases where you want to put that tool down, and other cases where you don't. I think the bond financing is also just really specific project by project. So I think the way I handle this one-on-one when I'm in conversations with people is I try to say, yes, let's figure this out. Let's
Yeah,
figure
yeah,
out
of
how to
course.
make it work. So if we
Yeah.
can convey that kind of attitude via our website, I think that would be the way to go. I think we should list the tools that we have used and encourage, people to submit and just get into it with
And
us.
Jane, I support that. I think that's a healthier way to approach
Mhm.
economic development, is to let people know what tools are available, but also somehow communicate that we tailor those tools
Right.
to the particular need, and then also what that development can bring to the city. I mean, It's a
Right.
two-way street. That's the
Right.
reason we have these tools. And it really bothers me that some communities say that, if you come in, I can give you a tax abatement, or I can give you this or that, carte blanche. I just don't think that's the best way to approach things.
Yeah.
But then, so that's at least
Tim, you
my-
might disagree being a developer.
No, I'm not sure that I do. I mean, you want to be able to discourage somebody from coming to town. And I think that's been our primary motivation for not promoting tools before. There's the long list of people we didn't want, or companies we didn't want to be here.
Mhm.
I mean, and we were, I think, in more of a growth mode than we are now. I mean, I don't think we're in the same situation, so
Yeah.
it seems like some promotion might be, I don't know. One question I have is BEDC, that's kind of their role. Do you work with them at all?
Mhm.
And do they market these tools on your behalf at all?
To a certain degree, and maybe I think that they're a better connector. We just haven't asked them to represent our interests directly the way that they might be doing with, say, Ellettsville.
Mhm.
Ellettsville doesn't have an economic development staff,
Okay.
and because they're a town, they're less experienced, and they're younger, they're less experienced with the tools than we are, and so I think they try to facilitate and connect, but I don't think that they try to necessarily market our tools. They
They
try to
don't
market our
they don't
remaining
represent us.
sites.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, and I think that's the other thing, like thinking about population growth, we're also just a more mature community where, I don't know what I could make up a name. I'd call us the late stage college town where our property values are really high, and that is one of the factors that's limiting us and contributing to development costs, and it's a deterrent for developers from participating here. So I think, marketing the tool is one thing, but another could be really trying to understand what works well in our market and really understand the needs of the developer, and then trying to ensure that we can get solutions in place faster when appropriate.
Mhm. What tools, like when you think about holistically, the toolkit that could be available, or you wish to have available, or we'd like to, what other tools could there be that are not currently in your toolbox?
That's a great question. I mean, okay, so the tools vary wildly state by state. And in Indiana, there aren't tools statewide that we don't also have access to locally. Like our local, we don't have any local restrictions. It's really just practice and making sure that you are connected on the state level and learning about what is coming down the pike. And we do anticipate some changes at IEDC based on the new administration coming in. And so it will be interesting to see what direction they go with the economic development toolkit. And we do call it a toolkit in practice. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting year. Kurt, do you have any intel on that? No.
I have a question about tax abatement. Do we have, and is maybe a city council ordinance, do we have a standardized formula for tax abatement for affordable housing? It used to be for 6 years if you did X and maybe 10 years if you did Y.
There is a set schedule of abatement that we default to that comes from the state statute, and I don't remember what it is off the cuff, but it's 10 years and it's scaled. It scales up to 100%. It starts with the 0% tax liability and gets up to 100% by the end of the 10-year period. And then usually a version of that is applied for affordable housing based on what percentage of the site is used for the affordable housing abatement. So with Retreat at Switchyard, for example, they have an abatement in place. The EDA, the economic development area, is applied to the entire parcel, but the schedule of abatement is only applied to the percentage of the site that is affordable. And in fact, that's one of the projects that we will also talk about hopefully in the next month, but I think that I will be, it's not ready yet, but I will be recommending that we revisit that schedule of abatement because that developer is expanding the affordable units on that site. So they're converting what was going to be market rate units to affordable. So they're increasing the affordability, and I kind of feel like we should consider responding in kind. But the math isn't done yet, working on that now and hopefully bringing that to you in February.
Sometime, if it's convenient, would you email out what you consider the guidelines for that?
Yeah.
It's a little different the way you described it than I thought it was. I'm just
Yeah. And each one, I mean, this is the kind of thing that it might be interesting to talk about. Since each one is different, we customize every agreement that we write for each affordable housing development. And in the past, we have done abatements on workforce units as a percentage of overall. The workforce representing a small percentage of units in a broader development. And I don't know what the appetite for that will be going forward. Those mix,
So Jane, sorry to interrupt you, but Tim just raised something that makes sense.
Yeah.
Since we have at least 3 relatively new members. I mean,
do a presentation.
to do a presentation
Yeah.
on the tax abatement program, so everybody knows. So when we have one to present it to us, we'll be ready.
Yeah, thank you.
As opposed to having to educate us at that time.
Yeah,
So,
I'm interested in that. And I think just level setting for us as a group, since we didn't get into the weeds last year. We didn't have any new projects last year, so.
and then any of the other tools that you can think of that you have available through the EDC,
Right.
might
Yeah,
talk briefly about those too,
yeah.
so we know that.
So.
I'm gonna
next-
put a plug in since Jessica's here for IFA and some of the programs in the IFA. Utilities especially could benefit from some of those low interest loans that they can get, so just.
We've also been working with our lobbyists to see if there's any, they're called TIFIA like loan and with
Oh, right.
water infrastructure loans at federal government. We haven't gotten anything yet, but that's something we're also keeping an eye on the federal level, which are,
The
I mean,
IFA.
there's I think, and about $50,000, I think there was a hefty fee to apply, but you get low interest rates, so.
Well,
yeah.
ridiculously
But the Indiana
low
Finance Authority
interest
provides
rates.
Yeah.
some really nice things that, and I had at least one program director come up to me at one time and say they didn't understand why Bloomington wasn't more active in the program, so I just want to
Yeah.
get that message out.
Yeah, which is frankly why the
Yeah, I was happy to see that at our
residential,
last
yeah,
meeting.
the
Really was.
residential infrastructure fund feels like a win because we haven't typically just done, I think we've been slow to apply for
That's a great win
economic
because
development revenue
only
bonds.
30% of the money available for that program can go to, I think it's jurisdictions with population over 50,000. So
Yeah.
I was happy to see Bloomington as that
Yeah.
part of
Yeah,
that
that's
50.
substantial.
Yeah,
Of
yeah.
that
And I think that's,
30%.
like, whether it's that specific program or a different type of
Right.
bond financing program, I think that's the kind of tool that I'd like us to get really good at.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
And,
Well, I'm glad to hear what you said too, that IFA has those programs. I'm just listening to the Plan Commission meeting a week ago or something like that. I know one of the Plan Commissioners has solid belief and evidence that a lot of our affordability challenges are utility related. And that's certainly been my experience, that it's a significant factor.
yeah, that's really interesting.
And if we could tap into some programs to make that more doable.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and these programs are doing it. We just in the last, it's been a busy week, but we just were notified of that total of $6 million for infrastructure in our community. So,
I-
yeah,
That's great.
we're hustling for it, but it's good to have you as a developer affirm that assumption. That's really important. I think. Yeah, so next meeting, overview of the tax abatement program and maybe some examples, organizing, and maybe a project.
So Margie could probably answer this too. Are tax abatement guidelines, are those ordinance or are those guidelines?
Those are approved by council. They're local guidelines. So they have to follow the state statute for the abatement, the state's abatement regulations. And then we set our guidelines locally. Those were updated in 2022.
So 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between a guideline and an ordinance?
Well, the guidelines, so, and you, like I just pulled up, you can get them off of our website. I'm sitting here thinking about creating a PowerPoint presentation with all of this stuff in it that Jane's office and our office can work on. But, it cites there are certain things you can do in code, and then basically under home rule, you can't do anything locally that violates state law, but we can be as creative as we think we need to be under home rule, if we want to do other things that we think are necessary, I guess part of to be creative with these tools.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
then-
my point.
Yeah, and that's where the council, I think, gets into the conversation about, what do they want to pass legislatively in
Right.
addition to, again, they can't pass anything that would violate state law, but they can certainly be creative.
And that's something, I mean, I had brought up in one of our earlier meetings last year. I mean, I'm really interested in exploring,
Understanding what the source of and what our constraints are, both that we've set for ourselves and, sort of statewide, but then thinking about, okay, where do we actually want to set the bounds locally, and I think having that conversation here to create a sort of theory of change, if you will, that we can then present and make whatever, at least fight for whatever changes that need to be made, I think is really helpful. And to do that in a holistic manner, like the way that we're talking about, so that, I mean, I think a big issue with doing business in Bloomington is often like we want to create more certainty for people when they come here, and so I think that has to do with some of the tools as well, right? And I think removing as much as possible threats of just things getting thrown, spanners being thrown, where people should feel like, hey, when we come to Bloomington, we know what we're going to get, and so I think we want to establish that and create really strong conceptualization at all levels of, hey, these are the tools that we're going to use and these are the ways that we're going to employ them.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and the efficiency that could follow
Yes.
from having
Yes.
that clear
So
understanding.
as an outsider, there'll always be constraints on being able to do that because you have an administration and you have a council.
Of course.
And the council may, and I know in the past, has had different philosophies
That's right.
than
And- yeah.
the administration. So,
Sure.
I mean,
Maybe
Jane
so.
and her staff can only do so much. They can say what the administration is willing to do. But it becomes a little bit of a throw it up in the air when it gets in front of the
Yeah.
council. It
But
can.
then,
Well-
but I was just going to add for that, just now speaking both, speaking from my personal perspective, I think that sometimes what's difficult then with a group of 9 is that when we don't discuss things like economic development tools in a systematic way,
Mhm.
it means that every single time that these are presented, it gets redebated, right?
Right.
And depending
That's
on
tough.
who the last person you spoke to, depending on other political things happening, right? And that creates a level of uncertainty that I think the council often makes worse, right?
Yeah.
And then other the personalities come involved and lots of different things, right? And so I do think that there's a benefit in sort of trust building and we think about the collective action required to move this forward. That we say, hey, these are the tools, right? And this is sort of our this is where we all think we are at this moment. And maybe you have to do that every 3 years, fine. But it's like, I think in this moment with this council and this administration, I think it's really helpful to approach.
Be a good exercise.
So to that point, what you sent us out on the tax abatement guidelines,
Mhm.
Margie will help me. My understanding was that each tax abatement becomes an ordinance.
Yes.
Okay. So the guidelines are truly guidelines and could be
Right.
debated, to your point, if there wasn't consensus.
Right.
So these guidelines, we should hope that we consent and that the council would consent because they're gonna have to.
Yeah, they're what we're using to help us determine, like, whether we have a viable, like a project that should truly qualify. First of all, there's the but-for test for any project that's seeking any kind of tax abatement. And then the guidelines help us understand if the project that passes the but-for test, does it qualify, does it fit our city's priorities? And so that's what the guidelines really do. And I think that in the past, the way the process has worked, city staff has worked with the applicant
Right.
to put together a packet of material and then brings that to the EDC, and then the EDC up or down votes the abatement or the whatever tools on the table, and then staff marches on to council for usually a 2-cycle
Right.
meeting, 2-cycle approval. But then it's always, in the past, it was always unknown how it would go at council. And under this administration, and Jessica chime in, and Margie if you want, but I think we're more interested in, it's not that we're more interested in, it's just that we would like for the process to be smooth and as efficient as possible. And so to that end, we will probably be coming to council with these application packets before we even come to EDC for an up or down vote. We want to know if things are possible, but there's just some interest in threading that needle a little more carefully. I'm just talking away in this meeting.
It's a good discussion. Any more on this topic?
Not for me.
Yeah.
I think one thing, just thinking about us then as a commission, we've throughout all of last year on the special committee on council processes or something, we did a lot of talk about the relationship between different commissions and boards with council. And the big priority that we've set this year is, which is sort of why then we were happy to fund the position that now Jennifer Crossley serves in at the clerk's office, is that how do you create a stronger relationship, right? So that it's not this sort of like so polycentric, right? It's polycentric, but you still want to have lots of communication between them. And so I also think that there's a space going in the opposite way that we just discussed, which is us as a commission saying, hey, these are the things that we want guidance, input from council, sort of as a, like, you know, to for this year, like give guidance on XYZ, right? You know, so you can sort of eliminate that extra step, right? It's like, you know, what information is useful to come out of these conversations to inform your vote that happens a week later, you know? And I think that, so it doesn't have to sort of like restart the process every single time, right? It's like, you just want that fluid, you know, continual flow of information, I think is, but I certainly don't think, I think that you create a commission and you put experts on the commission so that the experts are doing expert work, right? Rather than saying, hey, council, what would you approve? Hey, now experts look at it, feel, you know, like.
No, I think it's just like more working on all fronts together, rather than having just complete blind.
Yeah.
I think Jane's approach, she started already today.
Yes.
By giving us a peek at what's coming, is a good start.
Right.
And I mean, you are a liaison with the council, so you can help in that role, being active. And over the years, there have been some that have been very active and others that haven't really been very active, I'll just put it that way. But if we could talk about some of these projects in the early stages, and sort of frame the questions that we think the council may have, then we can have that conversation through you, through the council, to get some feedback from them before we go ahead and that helps you not finalize but improve the proposal.
Yeah, and it
before
creates,
it's brought here for an up and down, and then it goes to the council for an up and down.
It almost creates more buy-in, even though you
More
provide
consensus.
formal buy-in through the up and down
And
vote.
also
but-
gives the applicant some idea early on where the
Yeah.
the rough spots might
So-
be and whether they're going to be
Right.
successful or not.
Are you imagining that staff might bring projects and just talk to you broadly about a development that's happening without diving into what tool we think is going to be appropriate, or just lay it all on the table in advance?
I think it'd be nice to know what tool you're thinking about. but-
Yeah. Yeah.
But there may be other tools
Yeah.
that, and you may say, we considered this and we consider that, you can get some feedback.
Yeah. Great.
And as far as the tax abatement guidelines, Tim, the way I understand, we come up with generally what, again, first whether it can be or cannot, and then basically how we want to proceed. And then you have the parameters set up by the state on what the schedule of the abatement can be. And I'm unclear, because I know that's changed a little bit in the last couple of years, we've actually got a little more flexibility. It used to be a straight line depreciation of 10 years. You start at 0, and then 10% comes back on the roll all the way down to 100% at the end of 10 years. And we have a lot more flexibility, shorter periods of time, longer periods of time. And that's the sort of thing we can learn about next time.
Yeah. Great. It's good conversation.
All right, anything else on this topic? If not, do we have any other new or old business?
We do have old business, but maybe for next meeting, we have some sets of minutes that haven't been posted yet. So
I had
or
a question about minutes.
finalized yet.
Right,
So we'll
okay.
bring those to February for you to
Okay,
review and
good.
approve. Otherwise, that's it from us, I think.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, well,
It's good to see.
we sit adjourned, or we stand adjourned.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.